The dust devil rose from the prairie like a dancing spirit, and through its swirling heart rode a woman who seemed born from the wind itself, her long auburn hair streaming behind her as she guided her paint mare through terrain that would have broken lesser riders, and Deputy Marshal Daniel Vance watched from the ridge above with a mixture of admiration and disbelief that any human being could handle a horse with such absolute mastery. It was the spring of 1884, and the Oklahoma Territory stretched wild and untamed in every direction from where Daniel sat astride his bay gelding. He had been tracking a gang of cattle thieves for 3 weeks, following their trail from the Kansas border down through the Cherokee lands and into this rolling prairie country near the small settlement of Ardmore. The woman below had appeared like an apparition 20 minutes ago, riding hard from the east with no saddle between her and the horse, moving as though she and the animal shared a single mind. Daniel urged his horse down the slope, curiosity getting the better of his usual caution. He was a practical man of 26 years, raised on a ranch in Texas before the law called to him, and he knew good horsemanship when he saw it. What this woman was doing went beyond good. It was poetry written in motion, a conversation between human and beast that most people only dreamed of achieving. She saw him coming and slowed her mare to a canter, then a walk, watching him approach with eyes the color of storm clouds. Up close, she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 23 or 24, with sun-bronzed skin and freckles scattered across her nose like stars. She wore men's trousers and a worn cotton shirt, practical clothing for riding, and there was a wariness in her posture that spoke of someone who had learned to be careful around strangers. "You are following me," she said. It was not a question. "I was watching you ride," Daniel admitted, touching the brim of his hat. "I have never seen anyone handle a horse like that. No saddle, no bridle worth mentioning, and you were moving through that rough ground like water flowing downstream. My horse knows where to put her feet. I just sit and let her do her work." The woman's voice carried a trace of accent, something European that Daniel could not quite place. "You are a lawman. Deputy Marshal Daniel Vance." He kept his hands visible, noting how her eyes tracked his every movement. "I am tracking some men who stole cattle from a ranch up north. You have not seen anyone passing through here, have you? 6 men, driving about 40 head of cattle? I saw them yesterday, heading southwest toward the Red River." She pointed with her chin, an economical gesture. They were moving fast, pushing the cattle too hard. Some of the animals were limping. "How far?" "Half a day's ride, maybe less if you hurry, but your horse is tired, and you will not catch them before dark." She studied him with those storm-gray eyes, making some calculation he could not read. "There is a creek 2 miles south with good grass and water. You should rest there and start fresh in the morning." Daniel found himself nodding, though he had not planned to stop. Something about this woman commanded agreement, a quiet authority that had nothing to do with size or force. "And what brings you out here alone? This is not exactly safe country for anyone to be traveling without company." "I am not alone. I have Aurora." She patted the paint mare's neck with obvious affection. "And I can take care of myself. I have been doing it for a long time." "I do not doubt that," Daniel said, and meant it. "But I would be remiss in my duty if I did not at least offer to escort you somewhere safe. Where are you headed?" "Ardmore. I heard they need someone to break horses at the livery there. The owner, Mr. Patterson, he's getting too old to do it himself." She gathered her single rein, preparing to move on. "I do not need an escort, Marshal, but if you are going that way after you catch your cattle thieves, perhaps I will see you there." "Wait," Daniel called as she started to turn away. "I did not catch your name." She looked back over her shoulder, and for the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. "Anna Volkov. People call me Anna." Then she was gone, the paint mare moving from standstill to gallop in 3 strides, and Daniel was left sitting on his tired bay watching her disappear across the prairie with the same sense of wonder he had felt as a child, watching thunderstorms roll across the Texas plains. He had met many people in his years as a lawman, from outlaws to preachers, from gamblers to school teachers, but he had never met anyone quite like Anna Volkov. He found the creek she had mentioned and made camp as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. His bay gelding, grateful for the rest, drank deeply and then settled to grazing on the new spring grass. Daniel built a small fire and made coffee, his mind returning again and again to the woman on the paint mare. Where had she learned to ride like that? The accent suggested she was Russian, which raised more questions than it answered. What was a Russian woman doing alone in the Oklahoma Territory, looking for work-breaking horses? The night passed quietly, and Daniel rose before dawn to continue his pursuit. Anna had been right about the cattle thieves. He found their trail easily enough in the soft ground near the Red River and caught up with them by mid-morning. They were amateurs, young men who had thought stealing cattle would be easy money, and they surrendered without much fight when they saw his badge. He tied them together in a line and started the long journey back to the federal court in Fort Smith, driving the stolen cattle ahead of them. It took 4 days to deliver the prisoners and return the cattle to their rightful owner. 4 days during which Daniel found his thoughts drifting with alarming frequency to a woman with storm-gray eyes who could ride bareback like she had been born to it. He told himself it was simple curiosity, the natural interest anyone would feel after witnessing such remarkable skill. But he knew he was lying to himself. There had been something else, some spark of connection in those few minutes of conversation that he could not quite name but also could not ignore. When his business in Fort Smith was concluded, he pointed his horse south toward Ardmore. He told himself he was just passing through, that it made sense to stop in the town and check for any wanted men who might be hiding in the area. He told himself a lot of things, but the truth was simpler and more complicated. He wanted to see Anna Volkov again. Ardmore in the spring of 1884 was a settlement still finding its identity, a collection of wooden buildings clustered around the railroad tracks that had been laid through the previous year. The town served as a supply point for the ranches spreading across the surrounding territory, and it had the optimistic air of a place that believed its best days lay ahead. Daniel rode down the main street, noting the general store, the saloon, the small hotel, and the church that sat at the far end of town like a punctuation mark on civilization's sentence. The livery stable was easy to find, a large barn with a corral attached where several horses stood, watching the street with the resigned patience of animals waiting for something interesting to happen. Daniel dismounted and led his bay inside, where the smell of hay and leather and horse sweat enveloped him like a familiar blanket. "Help you?" The voice came from the shadows at the back of the barn. A man emerged, older, perhaps 60, with the bowed legs and weathered face of someone who had spent a lifetime working with horses. This would be Patterson, Daniel guessed. "I am looking for someone," Daniel said. "A woman named Anna Volkov. I heard she might be working here." Patterson's face creased into something between a smile and a grimace. "She is here, all right, out in the far corral with the devil horse. You are welcome to go watch, but stay clear of the fence. That animal has kicked 2 men already, and Miss Anna will not appreciate you distracting her." Daniel walked through the barn and out the back door to where a second, larger corral had been built away from the main building. Inside the corral, Anna stood in the center, and circling her at a distance of perhaps 20 feet was the most magnificent and most furious horse Daniel had ever seen. It was a stallion, coal black, with eyes that showed white and ears pinned flat against its skull. As Daniel watched, the horse charged at Anna, and his hand moved instinctively toward his gun. But Anna did not move. She stood perfectly still, and at the last possible moment, the stallion veered away, snorting and tossing its head. Anna turned to follow its movement, always keeping herself oriented toward the animal. But she never retreated, never showed fear. She was singing something, so quietly that Daniel could barely hear it, a melody that rose and fell like wind through grass. The stallion made 3 more charges, each one less committed than the last, and then it stopped, standing with its sides heaving, staring at the woman in the center of its territory. Anna kept singing, kept standing still, and slowly, incrementally, the horse's ears came forward. It took a step toward her, then another. Anna remained motionless, patient as stone, and the stallion walked closer until it stood directly in front of her, near enough that she could have reached out and touched it. She did not reach out. She waited, still singing, until the horse lowered its head and blew out a long breath. Only then did Anna move, raising her hand slowly to let the stallion smell her fingers. It pushed its nose against her palm, and she began to stroke the long face, scratching behind the ears that were now fully forward and relaxed. Daniel realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out slowly, aware that he had just witnessed something rare and remarkable. This was not breaking a horse in the traditional sense, with ropes and saddles and the battle of wills that usually accompanied the process. This was something else entirely, a negotiation, a conversation without words that ended not with one party conquering the other, but with both parties reaching an understanding. Anna led the stallion to the fence and slipped a rope halter over its head, her movements smooth and unhurried. Only then did she look up and see Daniel watching. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something else he could not quite read. "Marshal Vance," she said, leading the now docile stallion toward the gate. "Did you catch your cattle thieves?" "I did. They are in jail in Fort Smith, waiting for trial." Daniel opened the gate for her, and she led the horse through into a smaller paddock where water and hay waited. The stallion went immediately to the water trough, drinking deeply, and Anna removed the halter and stepped back out, latching the gate behind her. "That was remarkable," Daniel said. "I have never seen anyone work with a horse that way." Anna shrugged, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "He is not a bad horse, just frightened and angry because people treated him badly before. He needed to know that I would not hurt him, that I would listen to what he was telling me." She glanced at the marshal. "Why are you here? Ardmore is not on the way to anywhere from Fort Smith." "I came to see you," Daniel admitted, deciding that honesty was the best approach with this woman who seemed to see through pretense like it was window glass. "I could not stop thinking about you, about your riding. I wanted to see you again." Anna studied him for a long moment, and Daniel felt like he was being assessed as thoroughly as she had assessed the stallion, measured and weighed and evaluated. Finally, she nodded, as if he had passed some test he had not known he was taking. "I finish work at sunset," she said. "There is a restaurant next to the hotel. Mrs. Chen makes good food. If you want to buy me dinner, I will not say no. I am always hungry after working with horses." "I would like that very much," Daniel said, and the smile she gave him felt like a victory, small but significant. He spent the afternoon attending to his own horse, getting the animal settled at the livery and arranging for a room at the hotel. Ardmore's hotel was modest but clean, run by a widow named Mrs. Fletcher, who seemed delighted to have a deputy marshal staying under her roof. She promised to have his laundry done and told him where he could get a hot bath, services he accepted gratefully after 2 weeks on the trail. As the sun began its descent, painting the Oklahoma sky in shades of orange and gold, Daniel made his way to Mrs. Chen's restaurant. The establishment was small, just 6 tables, but the smells coming from the kitchen made his stomach growl with anticipation. Mrs. Chen herself was a Chinese woman who had come to Oklahoma with her husband to work on the railroad and stayed after his death, opening this restaurant that served a hybrid of American and Chinese cooking that had won over even the most skeptical cowboys. Anna arrived as the last light was fading from the sky, her hair damp from washing, wearing a simple dress that somehow made her look both more feminine and more foreign than she had in her riding clothes. Daniel stood as she entered, and she gave him another of those small, economical smiles as she took the seat across from him. "You cleaned up nice," she said, and there was a teasing note in her voice that made him grin. "I could say the same about you, though I admit I liked you just fine, covered in dust and horsehair." Mrs. Chen bustled over with tea and began making recommendations, and soon the table was covered with plates of food that Daniel could not quite identify, but that tasted better than anything he had eaten in months. As they ate, Anna began to talk, slowly at first, and then with increasing openness as she seemed to decide that Daniel could be trusted with her story. She had been born in Russia, in a small village near Moscow, the daughter of a horse trader who had taught her to ride almost before she could walk. Her family had been prosperous, but when she was 17, her father had made the mistake of backing the wrong political faction in some complicated dispute Daniel did not fully understand. They had fled Russia with barely more than the clothes on their backs, traveling across Europe and then to America, arriving in New York with nothing but determination and her father's knowledge of horses. They had worked their way west, following the railroad as it pushed across the continent. Her father had died 2 years ago, kicked by a horse he was training in Kansas, and Anna had continued alone, doing the only work she knew how to do. She had learned English quickly, though traces of her native accent remained, and she had learned to be careful, to trust slowly, to always have a plan for getting away if things turned bad. "It is not easy for a woman alone," she said, her gray eyes meeting his across the table. "Men think that because I am by myself, I am available, or weak, or both. I have had to move on from towns because some man would not take no for an answer, or because someone decided that a woman doing man's work was offensive to God or nature or whatever excuse they wanted to use." "You are not weak," Daniel said. Anyone with eyes can see that. But you are a lawman. You see things differently than most men. You are trained to observe, to judge situations clearly. Anna picked up her teacup, holding it between both hands as if warming them, though the night was not cold. Why do you really want to have dinner with me, Marshal Vance? What is it you want? It was a fair question, and Daniel took a moment to formulate his answer. I want to know you, he said finally. I have met a lot of people in my work, but I have never met anyone quite like you. The way you handle horses, the way you move through the world, like you are not afraid of it. I find that fascinating. I find you fascinating. Fascinating, Anna repeated, and Daniel could not tell if she was pleased or offended by the word. Then she set down her teacup and reached across the table, touching his hand briefly. That is honest, at least. I appreciate honesty. Too many people hide what they mean behind pretty words and false courtesy. They talked late into the evening until Mrs. Chen began pointedly clearing tables around them, and they realized they were the last customers remaining. Daniel walked Anna back to the boarding house where she was renting a room, a respectable establishment run by a German couple who kept strict rules about male visitors. At the door, Anna turned to face him. I have tomorrow off, she said. Mr. Patterson gives me 1 day a week to rest. If the weather is good, I like to ride out on the prairie, just Aurora and me. Would you want to come? I would like nothing better, Daniel said, meaning it completely. Then meet me here at dawn and bring your horse. I want to see if you can keep up. She said it like a challenge, and Daniel grinned. I will do my best. Your best will not be good enough, Anna said, but she was smiling as she said it. No one keeps up with me when I ride bareback, but it will be fun to watch you try. She disappeared inside before he could respond, and Daniel walked back to his hotel with a strange lightness in his chest that he had not felt in years. He had come to Ardmore on a whim, following an impulse he had not fully understood. Now, standing under the vast Oklahoma sky with its field of stars stretched horizon to horizon, he thought maybe he was beginning to understand after all. Dawn came cool and clear, the kind of spring morning that promised heat later, but for now offered perfect comfort. Daniel saddled his bay gelding with care, checking the cinch twice and making sure all his gear was secure. He had a feeling he was going to need every advantage he could get. Anna was waiting outside the boarding house, already mounted on Aurora. The paint mare danced sideways, eager to be moving, and Anna sat astride her back with that same complete confidence Daniel had observed before. She wore her riding clothes again, practical trousers and a shirt, with her long auburn hair braided down her back. Ready? She asked. As ready as I will ever be. Anna laughed, and then she was gone, Aurora leaping from standstill to full gallop in heartbeats. Daniel cursed good-naturedly and sent his bay after her, leaning low over the horse's neck as they raced out of town and onto the open prairie. Anna had not been exaggerating. Watching her ride from a distance was one thing, but trying to keep pace with her was something else entirely. She moved with the mare as if they were a single creature, flowing over the rough ground, jumping obstacles that Daniel had to skirt around, taking chances that would have broken both their necks if Aurora missed a single step. But the mare never missed, never faltered, responding to Anna's weight shifts and the pressure of her legs as clearly as if they were speaking aloud. Daniel's bay was a good horse, steady and strong, but he was saddled and bridled and carrying more weight with all of Daniel's gear. They fell behind quickly, and soon Anna was just a figure in the distance, a red-gold banner of hair streaming behind her as she rode toward the rising sun. He kept following, maintaining a steady pace, and eventually Anna circled back to him. Aurora barely winded despite the hard run. Anna's face was flushed with exertion and joy, her gray eyes bright. You are slow, she teased. You are impossible, Daniel countered. No one could keep up with you riding like that. I warned you. She brought Aurora alongside his bay, matching his pace now. But you tried at least. Most men would not even try. They would say it was not worth the effort, that I should slow down for them. Something tells me you would not slow down for anyone. You are right. Anna looked out across the prairie, her expression thoughtful. When I ride like that, I feel free. Like nothing in the world can touch me or hurt me. Like all the bad things that have happened do not matter anymore. Does that make sense? It does, Daniel said quietly. I felt something similar when I first started working as a marshal. The sense of purpose, of having a clear mission, of being good at something that mattered. Do you still feel that way? Daniel considered the question. Sometimes, not always. There is a lot of ugliness in my work, a lot of darkness. Sometimes I wonder if I am making any real difference, or if I am just moving bad men from one place to another without changing anything fundamental. Anna nodded slowly. I think everyone feels that way sometimes, like we are pushing against something too big to move. But then I work with a horse that everyone says is impossible, and I help it understand that the world does not have to be a scary place. And that feels like something real, something that matters. They rode together across the prairie, talking and falling silent and talking again, sharing pieces of their lives like gifts offered and accepted. Anna told him about her childhood in Russia, the long winters and the summer festivals, the way her father had taught her that horses were not property to be dominated, but partners to be respected. Daniel told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about the day his father had been killed by Comanche raiders, and how that loss had driven him toward a life enforcing the law, trying to create order from chaos. The sun climbed higher, and the day grew warmer. They stopped to rest the horses beside a stream that cut through the prairie, letting the animals drink while they sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree. Anna pulled food from her saddlebag, bread and cheese and apples, and they ate together while Aurora and the bay grazed nearby. Can I ask you something personal? Daniel said, finishing his apple and tossing the core away. You can ask. I may not answer. Fair enough. Daniel turned to face her more directly. Have you ever thought about staying somewhere, putting down roots instead of always moving on? Anna was quiet for a long time, picking at the grass beside her. I think about it sometimes, she said finally, but it is scary. Staying means trusting that things will not fall apart again, that I will not have to run again. I have been running for so long that I am not sure I remember how to stand still. I understand that, Daniel said. After my father died, I kept moving for years. New towns, new cases, never staying long enough to form real connections. I told myself it was because of the work, because marshals have to go where they are needed. But really, I think I was afraid. Afraid that if I cared about something too much, it would be taken away like my father was. And now? Are you still afraid? Daniel looked at her, at the way the dappled sunlight fell across her face, at the strength and vulnerability that somehow existed in her at the same time. Yes, he said honestly, but I am tired of running. I am tired of being alone. Anna met his eyes, and something passed between them, some acknowledgement of shared understanding. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers strong and calloused from years of working with horses and leather. I am tired too, she said softly. They sat like that for a while, hands linked, not speaking, listening to the wind move through the grass and the horses cropping contentedly nearby. Daniel felt something settling in his chest, some knot of tension he had been carrying for years beginning to loosen. He had known this woman for less than a week, but it felt like longer, like they had been moving toward this moment across vast distances and through years of separate experiences that had prepared them both for this meeting. Eventually, they had to ride back. The sun was past its zenith, and they both had responsibilities waiting. But the ride back was different from the mad gallop out. Anna stayed beside him, and they talked about small things, comfortable things, the kind of easy conversation that happens between people who are beginning to know each other beyond the surface. As they approached Ardmore, Anna suddenly pulled Aurora to a stop. Daniel halted beside her, concerned. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. Anna was looking at the town ahead, her expression thoughtful. I was just thinking that this is the first place in a long time that has felt like somewhere I could stay. The work is good. Mr. Patterson is fair and respectful. And now there is you. Daniel's heart jumped in his chest. And me? And you, Anna confirmed. She turned to look at him directly. I do not know what this is between us, Daniel, but I want to find out, if you do too. I do, Daniel said immediately. More than I have wanted anything in a long time. Anna smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. Then we will see what happens, but slowly, yes? I need to learn how to stand still again, and you need to learn how to stop running. Slowly, Daniel agreed. Though I should warn you, I am not a patient man by nature. Then this will be good practice for you. Anna gathered her single rein. Come on, I need to check on the black stallion before it gets dark. You can help me if you want." They spent the evening at the livery, Daniel watching and occasionally assisting, as Anna worked with the black stallion and several other horses in various stages of training. Patterson came out to observe for a while, nodding approvingly at the progress being made. "She is the best I have ever seen," he confided to Daniel during a moment when Anna was in the corral with a nervous sorrel mare. "I have been working with horses for 40 years, and I have never seen anyone with her gift. These animals trust her in a way they do not trust anyone else. It is like magic, but I know it is not magic. It is skill and patience and understanding." "She is remarkable," Daniel agreed. "You are courting her." It was a statement, not a question, and Patterson gave Daniel a shrewd look. "Be careful with that one, Marshal. She has been hurt before. I do not know the details, but I can see it in her eyes sometimes. She will not give her trust easily." "I do not expect her to," Daniel said, "but I am willing to earn it." Patterson nodded, satisfied. "Good. She deserves someone who will fight for her, someone who will stay." That night, Daniel lay in his hotel room and thought about what Patterson had said. Someone who will stay. Could he stay? His work as a deputy marshal had always been mobile, going where he was sent, chasing criminals across territories and state lines. But marshals did settle in one place sometimes, maintaining order in a particular region, becoming part of a community. There was no reason he could not request a permanent posting in the Oklahoma Territory. Ardmore was growing, and the surrounding ranches would need law enforcement as more settlers arrived. The more he thought about it, the more right it felt. He had been drifting for years, and maybe it was time to anchor himself somewhere. And if that somewhere happened to be a town where a remarkable Russian woman trained horses and looked at him with eyes like storm clouds, well, that was just good fortune. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Daniel made Ardmore his base of operations, dealing with minor disputes and the occasional horse thief or drunk cowboy causing trouble. The work was not glamorous, but it was necessary, and it kept him close to Anna. They fell into the habit of eating dinner together several times a week, either at Mrs. Chen's restaurant or at the hotel dining room. They went riding together on Anna's days off, and while Daniel never managed to keep up with her when she rode bareback at full speed, he got better at anticipating her moves, at reading the landscape the way she did. More importantly, they talked. Daniel learned about Anna's mother, who had died when Anna was young, leaving her to be raised by her father and the various horse traders and travelers who passed through their village. Anna learned about Daniel's siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, scattered now across Texas and beyond. They shared their dreams and fears, their memories and hopes, building between them something that felt solid and real. It was not always easy. Anna had moments when she would pull away, retreating into herself, and Daniel had to learn to give her space while also showing her that he was not going anywhere. His work sometimes took him away from Ardmore for days at a time, chasing leads or transporting prisoners, and Anna struggled with the fear that one day he would leave and not come back. "What if something happens to you?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "What if you are killed like my father was? How am I supposed to live with always worrying about that?" Daniel took her hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. "I cannot promise nothing will happen to me," he said honestly. "My work has risks, but I am careful, and I am good at what I do, and I promise you, I will always do everything in my power to come back to you." "That is not enough," Anna said, but her fingers tightened around his. "I know, but it is all I can offer." Daniel shifted to face her more directly. "Anna, love is always a risk. You risk your heart, you risk loss, you risk pain. But the alternative is to never connect with anyone, to never let yourself care, and that is not really living. That is just existing." Anna was quiet for a long moment, her gray eyes distant. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that made Daniel's throat tighten with emotion. "I am not good at this," she said quietly, "at letting people close, at believing things can last." "Neither am I," Daniel admitted, "but maybe we can learn together." Summer came to Oklahoma with its full force, temperatures soaring, and the prairie grass turning golden under the relentless sun. The horses at the livery grew lazy in the heat, and even Anna's energy flagged during the hottest parts of the day. Daniel and Anna adapted their rides to the early mornings or late evenings, seeking out creeks and shaded groves where they could escape the worst of the heat. It was on one such evening ride that they encountered trouble. They had ridden several miles from town, following a creek that wound through a series of low hills when they heard gunshots echoing across the landscape. Daniel immediately went on alert, his hand moving to his revolver. "Stay behind me," he told Anna, but she shook her head. "I am not staying anywhere. Those shots came from the direction of the Morrison Ranch. Something is wrong." She was right, and Daniel knew better than to waste time arguing. They urged their horses toward the sound, moving quickly but carefully, approaching the ranch buildings from the cover of a stand of trees. What they found made Daniel's jaw tighten with anger. 3 men on horses had surrounded the ranch house, firing shots into the air, while a 4th man tried to break down the door. Inside, Daniel could see movement, someone taking cover. This was either a robbery or a revenge attack, and either way, it needed to be stopped. "I am going in," he told Anna. "You need to get back to town and bring help." "How are you going to stop 4 men by yourself?" Anna demanded. "I am a deputy marshal. It is my job. Now please, Anna, go get help." For a moment, he thought she would argue, but then she nodded sharply and wheeled Aurora around, disappearing into the trees. Daniel waited just long enough to be sure she was clear, then urged his bay forward, his badge held high in his left hand, his gun drawn in his right. "Deputy Marshal," he shouted, "put down your weapons and step away from that house." The men spun around, surprised. For a moment, Daniel thought they might actually comply. Then the man at the door raised his rifle, and Daniel had no choice. He fired, his bullet taking the man in the shoulder and spinning him around. The other 3 scattered, taking cover behind a water trough and a wagon. The next few minutes were chaos. Daniel dismounted and took cover behind a tree, trading shots with the 3 remaining attackers while trying to protect both himself and whoever was trapped in the house. He was outgunned and outnumbered, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they flanked him or he ran out of ammunition. Then, impossibly, Anna was back. She came riding out of the trees at full gallop, no saddle, no real control that anyone could see. Just her and Aurora moving like a single entity. She rode straight at the wagon, where 2 of the men were sheltering, and Aurora leaped over it, scattering the men and giving Daniel a clear shot. He took down one, winging him in the leg, and the man collapsed, screaming. The remaining 2 realized they were beaten and threw down their weapons, hands raised. Daniel moved quickly to secure them, keeping his gun trained on them while he tied their hands behind their backs. The man he had shot in the shoulder had passed out, but his wound was not life-threatening. The other would have a permanent limp, but would live. Anna dismounted from Aurora, her face pale but composed. "I told you I do not stay behind," she said. "You could have been killed," Daniel said, anger and fear mixing in his voice. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking you needed help." Anna's gray eyes flashed. "And I was right. You are welcome, by the way." Before Daniel could respond, the door of the ranch house opened and a woman emerged, older, perhaps 50, with a shotgun clutched in her hands. She looked at the scene, at the tied-up outlaws and the wounded men, at Daniel's badge and Anna standing beside him. "Thank God," she said, her voice shaking. "They wanted my husband's savings, said they knew he had money hidden. But James is in town selling cattle. I was here alone." Daniel helped her inside and made sure she was unharmed, then went out to deal with the prisoners. By the time help arrived from town, summoned by a ranch hand who had been working in a distant field and had heard the shots, everything was under control. Daniel turned the prisoners over to the local sheriff for temporary holding, and he and Anna rode back to Ardmore in the gathering darkness. They did not speak until they reached the livery. Anna took care of Aurora while Daniel tended to his bay, and then they stood facing each other in the dim light of the barn, the smell of hay and horses surrounding them. "I am sorry for getting angry," Daniel said. "You saved my life today. I should have said thank you first." "You were scared for me," Anna said. "I understand that. I was scared too. When I rode away like you told me, I got maybe half a mile before I realized I could not do it. I could not leave you there alone. So, I came back." "You came back," Daniel echoed. He reached out and pulled her to him, holding her tight against his chest, feeling her heart beating against his. "You crazy, brave, impossible woman. You came back." Anna's arms went around him, and they stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, the adrenaline of the fight slowly fading. When Daniel finally pulled back enough to look at her face, he saw tears on her cheeks. "I thought you would be angry," she whispered. "I am angry and grateful and terrified, and so in love with you that I can barely think straight." The words came out before Daniel could stop them, truth spoken without filtering or planning. Anna's eyes widened. "You love me?" "Yes." There was no point in taking it back now. "I love you, Anna Volkov. I love your courage and your stubbornness and the way you talk to horses like they are people. I love that you came back for me even when I told you to run. I love everything about you, and I know it is too soon, and I should have waited to tell you, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way." Anna was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face, but she was also smiling. "I love you too," she said. "I have been trying not to, because it scared me so much. But I do. I love you, Daniel Vance." He kissed her then, there in the shadowy barn, with the horses as their only witnesses, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Anna kissed him back with a fierceness that matched everything else about her, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel knew with absolute certainty that this was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. "Marry me," he said, the words tumbling out without conscious thought. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I am sure, Anna. I am more sure of this than I have ever been of anything. Marry me." Anna laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the barn. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you, Daniel Vance, but on one condition." "Anything?" "You have to learn to ride bareback. I am not marrying a man who needs a saddle for everything." Daniel laughed and pulled her close again. "Deal. Though I am warning you now, I will never be as good at it as you are." "That is all right," Anna said, resting her head against his chest. "I do not need you to be as good as me. I just need you to try and to stay. Can you stay, Daniel? Can you make Ardmore your home?" "I can," Daniel said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I will write to the Marshal Service tomorrow and request a permanent posting here. Ardmore needs a lawman, and I need you. It is as simple as that." They were married 6 weeks later in the small church at the end of Ardmore's main street. The entire town turned out for the wedding, curious to see the Russian horse trainer and the deputy marshal tie the knot. Patterson gave Anna away, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face. Mrs. Chen provided the wedding feast, and the celebration went on late into the night, with dancing and music and laughter. Daniel had never been happier in his life. Watching Anna in her simple white dress, her auburn hair crowned with wildflowers, promising to love him until death parted them, he felt like the luckiest man alive. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, he kissed her to the cheers and applause of the gathered crowd, and he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. They had rented a small house on the edge of town, 2 rooms and a porch, with a corral out back for Aurora and Daniel's bay. It was not much, but it was theirs, and Anna declared it perfect. They spent their wedding night tangled together in their own bed, learning each other with hands and lips and whispered words. And when dawn came, Daniel woke to find Anna watching him with those storm-gray eyes, a smile on her face. "Good morning, husband," she said. "Good morning, wife," he replied, pulling her close for a kiss that quickly turned into something more. Later, as they lay together in the tumbled sheets, Anna traced patterns on Daniel's chest with her fingertips. "I never thought I could have this," she said quietly. "A home, a husband, someone who loves me and stays." "You have it now," Daniel promised, "and I am not going anywhere." Life settled into a new rhythm. Daniel continued his work as a deputy marshal, but true to his word, he had requested and received permission to make Ardmore his permanent base. He handled local law enforcement and occasionally assisted with larger cases in the territory, but he was always home within a few days, always coming back to Anna. She continued working with horses at Patterson's livery, her reputation spreading until ranchers from miles around brought their difficult animals for her to train. They worked together sometimes, Daniel helping with the easier horses, or handling the business side of things, while Anna did what she did best. On Anna's days off, they would ride out onto the prairie together, and Daniel practiced riding bareback under her patient instruction. He never achieved her level of skill, never could match her oneness with the horse, but he got good enough that he could ride beside her without a saddle for short stretches, feeling the powerful muscles of the horse moving beneath him, understanding a little better what Anna felt when she rode. Fall came, and with it cooler temperatures and the first hints of winter on the northern wind. Anna seemed to bloom in the cooler weather, her energy increasing, her rides getting longer and wilder. Daniel loved watching her ride Aurora across the gold and brown landscape, loved the joy on her face when she returned flushed and windblown. It was on one such ride, shortly before their first anniversary, that Anna came galloping back to him, where he waited by a creek, her face alight with excitement. "I have news," she announced, sliding off Aurora with practiced ease. "Important news." "Good news or bad news?" Daniel asked, standing to greet her. "Good news, the best news." Anna took his hands in hers, her smile radiant. "We are going to have a baby, Daniel. I am pregnant." Daniel felt like the breath had been knocked out of him. "A baby? Are you sure?" "I am sure. I have suspected for a few weeks, but I visited the doctor yesterday to confirm it. He says the baby should come in early summer." Anna searched his face anxiously. "Are you happy? I know we have not talked much about children yet." "Happy?" Daniel swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests to be careful. "Anna, I am thrilled, amazed, terrified, all of it at once. We are going to be parents." He set her down gently, suddenly aware of the precious cargo she carried. "Should you still be riding? Is it safe?" "The doctor says as long as I am careful. Riding is fine for now. I will have to stop eventually, but not yet. I am not giving up Aurora until I absolutely have to." Anna cupped his face in her hands. "We are going to be a family, Daniel. A real family." "We are already a family," Daniel said. But he knew what she meant. The baby growing inside her was the future they were building together, proof that good things could last, that trust and love could overcome fear and loss. Winter came to Oklahoma territory, and with it, a series of blizzards that kept everyone close to home for weeks at a time. Daniel worried constantly about Anna, watching her like a hawk for any signs of trouble with the pregnancy. She endured his hovering with patient amusement, assuring him repeatedly that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and she was perfectly healthy. She continued working with horses through the winter, though she gave up riding by December, when her belly had grown round and obvious. Instead, she focused on groundwork, training horses from the ground rather than from their backs, and Daniel was fascinated to see that she was just as effective this way. The horses responded to her voice, to her body language, to some quality of attention and respect that transcended the physical act of riding. Christmas came, their first as a married couple, and they celebrated quietly in their little house, exchanging small gifts and making plans for the baby. Anna was knitting blankets and tiny clothes, her hands always busy. Daniel was building a cradle from oak wood, carving it carefully during the long winter evenings, while Anna sat nearby and talked to him about her day. "What should we name the baby?" Anna asked one evening as the snow fell softly outside their window. "If it is a boy, I was thinking maybe Daniel after you, or James after my father. And if it is a girl, I do not know, something strong, something that reminds her that she can do anything." Anna looked down at her belly, where the baby was currently kicking hard enough to be visible through her dress. "I want our daughter to know she does not have to be afraid of the world, that she can ride bareback in any weather, just like her mother." Daniel smiled at the image. "How about Aurora, after your mare?" Anna considered this, then shook her head. "Too obvious, but maybe something with the same meaning. Dawn? That is what Aurora means, the dawn. Our daughter could be Dawn." "Dawn Vance?" Daniel tested the name. "I like it. It sounds hopeful, like a new beginning." "That is what she will be," Anna said softly, her hand on her belly. "Our new beginning." Spring came slowly, the frozen earth reluctantly surrendering to warmth and new growth. By April, Anna was large and uncomfortable, ready for the pregnancy to be over. She had stopped working at the livery entirely, spending her days at home or walking slowly around the town, desperate for any activity that might help the time pass faster. The baby came on a warm May evening, arriving with the kind of dramatic timing that Anna would later claim was entirely appropriate for a child of hers. Daniel had been in their small kitchen making dinner when Anna called out from the bedroom, her voice tight with pain. "Daniel, it is time. The baby is coming." The next hours were simultaneously the longest and shortest of Daniel's life. Mrs. Chen came to help, along with the town's midwife, Mrs. Muller, and they banished Daniel from the bedroom with orders to boil water and stay out of the way. He paced the porch, listening to Anna's cries of pain and effort, feeling utterly helpless. When he finally heard the thin, angry wail of a newborn, he nearly collapsed with relief. Mrs. Chin emerged a few minutes later, her face wreathed in smiles. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy baby boy, and your wife did beautifully. She is tired but well. You can go in now." Daniel entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Anna lay propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms, wrapped in one of the blankets she had knitted, was the smallest, most perfect human Daniel had ever seen. "Come meet your son," Anna said softly, and Daniel crossed to the bed, sitting carefully on the edge. The baby had a surprising amount of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face. His eyes were squeezed shut, and his tiny fists waved in the air as if he was already ready to fight the world. Daniel reached out one finger, and the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are amazing, Anna. Absolutely amazing." "We need to name him," Anna said, looking down at their son. "I was so sure it would be a girl. I did not think enough about boy names." "What about James, after your father?" Daniel suggested, remembering their earlier conversation. Anna smiled. "James Daniel Vance." "Yes, that is good. James, after the man who taught me everything I know about horses. And Daniel, after the man who taught me that staying in one place can be just as brave as running." "James it is," Daniel agreed, and leaned down to kiss his wife's forehead. "Thank you, Anna, for him, for everything." The next months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and constant exhaustion. James proved to be a colicky baby, crying often and sleeping rarely. But he was healthy and growing fast, and Daniel and Anna learned to function on minimal sleep, taking turns walking the floor with their son, singing to him, doing anything to help him settle. Anna struggled with being away from the horses. She had not realized how much of her identity was tied up in her work until she could no longer do it. Daniel came home more than once to find her standing by the corral, watching Aurora with longing in her eyes. "Why do you not go ride?" he suggested one evening when James was 3 months old and finally sleeping better. "I can watch him for a few hours. You need to get back on a horse, Anna. You are miserable without it." "I am a mother now," Anna protested. "I have responsibilities." "And you will be a better mother if you are happy," Daniel countered. "Please, Anna, go ride. I know you want to." So Anna rode, starting slowly at first, reacquainting herself with Aurora and the feeling of being on horseback. Within weeks, she was back to her old form, riding bareback across the prairie with the same wild joy Daniel remembered from when he first saw her. She always came back energized, more patient with James, more present in their little family. When James was 6 months old, Anna returned to work at the livery, bringing the baby with her in a basket that she kept in the barn office. Patterson was delighted to have her back, and the baby seemed to thrive in the atmosphere of horses and hay. He would lie in his basket, watching the horses with wide, curious eyes, gurgling and waving his hands. "He is going to be a horseman like his mother," Patterson predicted, and Anna smiled with pride. Life continued, full and rich and occasionally challenging. Daniel advanced in his career, becoming the chief deputy marshal for the Oklahoma Territory, a position that came with more authority and better pay. They were able to buy a larger house, with room for James to run and play, and a proper barn for their growing number of horses. Anna's reputation as a horse trainer spread far and wide, and she was offered work from as far away as Kansas and Texas. When James was 2 years old, Anna became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and Anna continued working almost up to her due date. Their daughter was born on a crisp October morning, arriving quickly and with far less drama than her brother. They named her Dawn, as they had discussed years before, and she proved to be everything they had hoped, strong and healthy and curious about the world. Daniel watched his family grow with a sense of wonder that never quite faded. Anna teaching James to ride on a gentle pony, the boy fearless and laughing, Dawn taking her first steps in the corral, reaching for Aurora's nose. Anna riding bareback across the prairie, her hair streaming behind her, still the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. The years passed, marked by birthdays and Christmases, by first days of school and lost teeth, by horses trained and criminals caught and quiet evenings on the porch watching the sun set. James proved to have his mother's gift with horses, though his temperament was gentler, more patient. Dawn was fearless, climbing everything and diving into new experiences with abandon. When James was 8 and Dawn was 6, Daniel came home one evening to find Anna standing in the corral with a new horse, a young bay mare that had been abused by her previous owner and was terrified of humans. He stood watching as Anna worked her magic, patient and calm, never pushing, always waiting for the horse to make the choice to trust. James stood nearby, watching his mother with the same intense focus, learning without words. That night, as they lay in bed, Daniel pulled Anna close and breathed in the familiar scent of her hair, horses and hay, and the lavender soap she favored. "Do you remember the first time I saw you ride?" he asked. "Of course. You were sitting on that ridge, watching me like I was some kind of strange creature you had never seen before." Anna smiled in the darkness. "I thought you were ridiculous, a lawman who followed strange women just because they could ride well." "I followed you because I had never seen anything so beautiful in my entire life," Daniel said. "And I was right. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever known, Anna Vance. You are only saying that because you love me. I am saying it because it is true, and yes, because I love you. More every day somehow." Daniel kissed her temple. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who could not keep up with you." "You kept up where it mattered," Anna said, turning in his arms to face him. "You kept up with my heart, Daniel. You matched my pace in all the ways that count. That is all I ever needed." "I did try to keep up with your riding, though," Daniel pointed out. "You made me learn to ride bareback. Remember? And you got good at it. Not as good as me, but good enough." Anna laughed softly. "I think that is a good metaphor for marriage. You do not have to be the same as your partner. You just have to be willing to try to meet them where they are, to appreciate what makes them special." "When did you get so wise?" "I have always been wise. You just were too busy staring at me to notice." Anna kissed him, slow and sweet. "I love you, Daniel Vance. Thank you for not giving up when I was afraid. Thank you for staying." "Always," Daniel promised. "I will always stay." Outside, a storm was building, thunder rumbling in the distance. But inside their home, in their bed, surrounded by the life they had built together, Daniel and Anna were safe and warm and exactly where they belonged. The woman who could ride bareback in any weather had found her home, and the cowboy who had tried to keep up had discovered that the best thing he ever did was not catching her, but convincing her to let him ride beside her. The years continued to unfold, bringing both joys and challenges. There was the summer drought when they had to haul water from miles away to keep the horses healthy. The winter that James caught pneumonia, and they spent terrifying nights by his bedside, watching him fight for breath. The day Dawn fell from a horse during a training session and broke her arm, then insisted on getting back on as soon as the bone healed. Through it all, Daniel and Anna remained partners in every sense of the word. They built a business together, training horses and occasionally selling well-trained animals to ranchers who appreciated quality. Daniel's work as a marshal kept him busy, but he structured his schedule so that he was home most nights, present for dinner and bedtime stories and the 1,000 small moments that made up family life. When James was 15, tall and lean and serious, he came to his parents with a proposal. He wanted to start breeding horses, focusing on animals that combine strength with gentleness, horses that would be good for families and small ranches. Daniel and Anna listened to his careful plans, his research into bloodlines and breeding practices, and agreed to help him start his venture. Within a few years, Vance Ranch horses were known throughout the territory as some of the finest available. Dawn, meanwhile, took after her mother in ways that sometimes terrified Daniel. She was riding bareback by the time she was 8, and by 12, she could match Anna move for move. She had no interest in the business side of horses, but she loved the training, loved the challenge of working with difficult animals and helping them find their confidence. "She is me at that age," Anna said one evening, watching Dawn work with a skittish gelding that had been written off as untrainable. "Fearless and stubborn and absolutely convinced she can do anything." "She gets that from you," Daniel agreed. "The confidence, the skill, the complete lack of self-preservation instinct that makes her father's hair turn gray." Anna laughed and leaned against him. "Your hair was already gray, my love. I cannot take credit for that." "You absolutely can take credit for it. Between you and Dawn, I am lucky I have any hair left at all." But Daniel was smiling as he said it, proud of his daughter even as she terrified him. The Oklahoma Territory became the state of Oklahoma in 1907, a change that brought new energy and investment to the region. Ardmore grew from a small settlement into a proper town with paved streets and electric lights, a bank and a proper school, churches and businesses. The Vance family grew with it, becoming pillars of the community. Daniel was elected sheriff, a position he held for many years, while Anna's horse training business expanded to include students who came from all over to learn her methods. They added to their house over the years, building extra bedrooms and a bigger barn, creating a home that could accommodate their growing family and the steady stream of students and visitors who came to learn from Anna. The house was always full of life and noise and the smell of horses and cooking food. Exactly the kind of home Anna had dreamed of as a child in Russia, though she would never have imagined she would find it in Oklahoma. When James was 22, he married a young woman named Sarah from a nearby ranch, a quiet girl with a good head for numbers who took over the business side of the horse breeding operation and helped it flourish. Anna and Daniel gained their first grandchild, a boy named Thomas, a year later. And Daniel discovered that being a grandfather was even more wonderful than being a father. Dawn showed no interest in marrying, much to the frustration of several young men in town who had tried and failed to win her attention. She was too busy with the horses, she said, and besides, she had not met anyone who understood her the way her father understood her mother. Daniel secretly hoped she was right, that she would wait for someone special rather than settling for merely adequate. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Daniel took Anna back to the place where he had first seen her ride. It took some effort to find the exact spot. The landscape had changed so much, but Anna knew it immediately. "This is it," she said, sliding down from Aurora. The paint mare was older now, her muzzle graying, but she was still strong and healthy, still Anna's first choice for riding. "This is where you were sitting on that ridge, watching me like a crazy person." "I was not crazy. I was appreciating art," Daniel protested, dismounting from his own horse, a young gelding that James had bred. "And I stand by that assessment. Watching you ride was and is one of the great privileges of my life." They spread a blanket on the grass and sat together, looking out across the prairie. It was spring again, the season when they had met, and wildflowers dotted the landscape in brilliant splashes of color. "Do you ever regret it?" Anna asked suddenly. "Staying here? You could have gone anywhere, done anything. You were a good marshal, Daniel. You could have had important posts in big cities." "I chose the important post I wanted," Daniel said firmly. "Right here, with you. Every choice I made was the right one, Anna. Every single one." Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am glad you followed me that day. I am glad you kept trying even when I was difficult and scared. I am glad you stayed. I am glad you let me stay. I am glad you took a chance on a cowboy who could not ride bareback and who thought following a strange woman across the prairie was a good idea." Daniel wrapped his arm around her. "We have built a good life, haven't not we?" "The best life," Anna agreed. "Sometimes I still cannot believe it is real, that I get to wake up every morning next to you, that we have children and grandchildren, that I have a home and work I love. It is everything I never knew I wanted." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun move across the sky, the wind moving through the grass in rippling waves. After a while, Anna stood and extended her hand to Daniel. "Come on," she said. "Ride with me. Bareback, like I taught you." Daniel groaned but allowed himself to be pulled to his feet. "Anna, we are not young anymore. What if I fall off?" "Then I will laugh at you and help you back on," Anna said with a grin. "Come on, my love. Show me you remember what I taught you." So they rode together across the prairie, without saddles, without fear. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and real. Daniel did not fall off, though it was a close thing a few times, and Anna's laughter rang out across the landscape, bright and joyful and free. They rode until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple, then made their way slowly back to Ardmore, to home, to the life they had created together. As they approached the town, lights beginning to glow in windows as families gathered for dinner, Anna turned to Daniel. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For everything. For chasing me, for staying, for giving me a reason to stop running, for being the kind of man who tries to ride bareback just because his wife wants him to." Anna reached out and took his hand. "For loving me exactly as I am." That was the easy part, Daniel said, squeezing her hand gently. Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done. They rode home together, side by side, partners and lovers and best friends, the woman who could ride bareback in any weather, and the cowboy who had learned that keeping up was not about matching her speed, but about matching her heart. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more joys and sorrows. But they would face them together, as they had faced everything since that spring day in 1884, when Daniel had watched Anna ride through a dust devil and decided to follow her. It had been the best decision of his life, and every day that followed had only confirmed that truth. In the end, that was what mattered. Not that he had tried to keep up and failed in that first wild ride, but that he had kept trying every day after, in all the ways that truly counted. And Anna, the woman who had spent so many years running, had finally found a reason to stay, a place to call home, and a love that would last until the very end of their days. Their story became legend in Ardmore, the tale of the Russian horse trainer and the cowboy marshal who had built a life together against all odds. Their children and grandchildren would tell the story for generations, keeping alive the memory of Anna's incredible skill with horses and Daniel's patient, persistent love. But for Anna and Daniel themselves, the story was simpler and more profound. It was the story of two lonely people who found each other and decided to be brave enough to stay, to build, to trust that love could last even in a world that was often harsh and uncertain. On a warm summer evening, many years later, when Daniel was in his 70s and Anna was approaching 70 herself, they sat together on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the prairie they both loved. Their hands were clasped together, fingers intertwined, and they did not need words. Everything that mattered had already been said, had been proven through decades of shared life, through children raised and horses trained, through storms weathered and joys celebrated. "I would do it all again," Anna said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Every single moment. I would not change anything." "Neither would I," Daniel agreed. "Well, maybe I would have learned to ride bareback a little faster, save myself some bruises." Anna laughed, the sound rich and warm. "You did fine. You always did fine, Daniel. You were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it." "We were what each other needed," Daniel corrected gently. "You saved me as much as I saved you, Anna. Maybe more." They sat until the stars came out, bright and clear in the Oklahoma sky, the same stars that had watched over them through all the years of their marriage. Inside, they could hear Dawn moving around, preparing dinner. She had never married, had chosen instead to stay and help run the horse training operation that had grown far beyond what any of them had originally imagined. James and Sarah visited often with their 3 children, filling the house with noise and laughter. It was a good life, rich and full, built on a foundation of love and trust and mutual respect. The woman who could ride bareback in any weather had found her home, and the cowboy who had tried to keep up had learned that success was not measured in speed or skill, but in commitment and staying power. They had built something that would outlast them, a legacy of family and horsemanship and love that would ripple forward through generations. As the night deepened and the air grew cool, Daniel helped Anna to her feet, and they went inside together, moving slowly now, but still together, still partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the prairie stretched away into darkness, wild and beautiful and free, just like the woman who had ridden across it bareback all those years ago, and just like the love story that had grown from that single moment of connection between two people who had both been running from pain and who had found, in each other, a reason to finally stand still.